Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The impeachment of President Donald J. Trump is taking another major step forward today. The House Rules Committee is preparing to vote on a resolution laying out the procedures for the next big steps in the inquiry, including public hearings. They are literally convening right now to do that as we speak. The full House is then expected to vote on the resolution tomorrow. Legislators have already heard dozens of hours of private testimony that continues to be more and more damning for the president. We already know from President Trump's own words and the phone call notes released by the White House that the president corruptly attempted to coerce an occupied foreign country to manufacture dirt on an American citizen, indeed his possible political opponent. When the Ukrainian president said he was ready to buy more American weapons, that is, send the aid, we're standing by, President Trump immediately responded, "I would like you to do us a favor, though." The bad news for Trump is that the phone call itself is incriminating, but also the phone call provides just one small glimpse into a sprawling covert effort. And there are two things that are true about all the people around Trump who have watched this happen. One group is attempting to cover it all up, because at some level they seem to know this was an abuse of power and possibly illegal. And the other group, who are not the president's cronies, recognized at the time it was an abuse of power, possibly illegal, and have been and were sounding every alarm bell possible. Today, State Department officials Christopher Anderson and Catherine Croft appeared before the investigating House committees. Anderson served as special advisor for Ukraine negotiations until this July. He testified for nearly 4 hours this afternoon. In his opening statement, Anderson said that when he pushed for increased White House support for the new Ukrainian president, former National Security Advisor John Bolton warned that Rudy Giuliani, quote, was a key voice with the president on Ukraine, which could be an obstacle to increased White House engagement. Catherine Croft then took over for Anderson in July after spending 2 years as a director covering Ukraine on the National Security Council. She testified for nearly 5 hours this morning. She described her earliest experience with the push to remove the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, quote, "During my time at the NSC, I received multiple calls from lobbyist Robert Livingston, who told me that Ambassador Yovanovitch should be fired. It was not clear to me at the time or now at whose direction or at whose expense Mr. Livingston was seeking the removal of Ambassador Yovanovitch. I documented these calls and told my boss." It's probably worth noting here that lobbyist Robert Livingston is one and the same as the former House Speaker-elect during Bill Clinton's impeachment, who had to leave because he admitted to extramarital affairs and then resigned. That Robert Livingston. Now, today, also, we learned that the president's last national security advisor, the infamous, the notorious, mustachioid John Bolton, has been invited to testify before the investigating House committees next Friday, November 7th. Now, remember, several witnesses have already testified that Bolton was concerned about Trump's Ukraine pressure campaign. He told multiple witnesses to contact NSC lawyers, referred to the whole scheme perfectly as, quote, a drug deal. So every day, the scope of this entire thing and those who knew about it just keeps getting bigger, including the number 2 guy at the State Department, John Sullivan. And today, Mr. Sullivan had the misfortune of going before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where he is seeking to be confirmed as the next U.S. ambassador to Russia. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, as you might expect, had some questions.
Do you think it's ever appropriate for the president to use his office to solicit investigations into a domestic political opponent?
Soliciting investigations into a domestic political opponent, I don't think that would be in accord with our values.
You were aware that there were individuals and forces outside of the State Department seeking to smear Ambassador Yovanovitch, is that correct?
I was.
And to seeking to remove her, is that correct?
I was.
And did you know Mr. Giuliani was one of those people?
I believed he was, yes.
Well, that's something. I don't think anybody was expecting that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, second in command, to go as far as he did, condemning Trump's pressure campaign, throwing Rudy Giuliani in the bus. Although Sullivan also admitted that he knew what was happening, at least as far as Rudy Giuliani goes. He knew and he did nothing. And that guy is very likely going to be the next ambassador to Russia, the country that is, of course, occupying a large chunk of Ukraine. And he apparently took no action. Now, President Trump wants to pivot away from complaining about the process of Democrats' impeachment investigation. He sent out a distress signal this morning imploring, quote, Republicans. Yes, he did spell it that way. Go with substance and close it out. The problem for Trump is the substance is the bad part. We know the transcript was damning. Last night, after we got off air, New York Times reported Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman testified yesterday. The White House transcript of a July call between President Trump and Ukraine's president omitted crucial words and phrases, and that his attempts to include them failed. You'll remember Trump said and says that the call was perfect and said it was a word-for-word transcript, but that's not true. And if it was true, why did the White House try to hide the call by inappropriately putting in a super classified server? And why did they release this incomplete version? And why did they prevent Lieutenant Colonel Vindman from including the information he found important? Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.